Okay, I think it is getting recorded now. Okay, so let us start with what we have studied in the previous class and then we'll be moving forward, right? So we were talking about disease, right? Why do we fall ill was the chapter. And initially, I told you about the definition of health, right? It is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well being. And then we briefly talked about what is physical, mental, and social well being. And then I talked about the determinants of health, right? I said these are the things which determine the health of an individual, which included the environment, what kind of food you eat, your educational status, income, and these things, right? Then I talked about the definition of disease, right, in which I talked about any condition which hampers the equilibrium of mind and body, right? And then we talked about the difference between sign and symptoms, where whatever the patient tells is the sign, and whatever doctor observe is the whatever the patient uh, describes about his illness is the symptom, and whatever the doctor understands and whatever the doctor sees in that patient are the signs, right? Then I talked about the disease and its classification on the basis of time duration. A disease can be acute or short duration, or it can be chronic, right? So these were the things which we talked about in acute and chronic illness. And then we moved on to the causes of disease, right? I had tried to give you different levels of the causes which can be attributed to a disease. Now let us move to some other part of it, and this is basically one more classification of disease. Why we are classifying disease so many times? Like initially, I told you about the classification of disease based on time duration, and then there is one more classification which talks about a disease being infectious or non-infectious. Basically, when I was talking about the classification of disease in terms of time, I was actually as a physician or as a general population, we try to know since when the person is suffering from a particular disease, right? So if any disease is acute such that it is very severe, and uh, uh, the time duration is very short, in that we need some quick interventions, right? जिसमें कि हमको बहुत जल्दी उसको ठीक करना होता है, एंड देयर आर डिजीज विच आर लॉन्ग टर्म डिजीजेस जिसको अप्रोच करने का तरीका डिफरेंट होता है. सो in a community there are people who are suffering from these short term diseases like common cold or maybe a heart attack for that matter, right? And there are certain diseases which run continuously in our society, like because of obesity somebody has developed hypertension or maybe diabetes, right? So these kind of diseases require a completely different kind of intervention. That's why we are trying to classify disease into uh, acute and chronic. Now there is another classification of disease which talks about it being infectious or non-infectious, right? So a disease can be infectious or non-infectious. So what does it mean when I say that a disease is infectious or if it is non-infectious? Like in general parlance also we talk about कि यार हाथ में infection हो गया है, right? And we never see कि यार ये non-infectious वाला disease है. So trying to understand what a disease, when we call a disease infectious, it means it is a communicable disease, right? So a disease which can get transmitted from one person to another, in general we categorize them as infectious disease, right? So when I say infectious disease, it means if you have this disease, then other person can also have the very same disease because you are diseased, and there are many modes through which you can cause the disease to some other person, right? The very evident example of this is COVID, right? COVID is an infectious disease because it gets communicated from one person to another, right? So what is infectious disease? So I'm writing about this. Diseases which are communicable or transmittable from one person to another, right? Diseases which are communicable or transmittable from, sorry, one person to another, right? So these are called infectious disease, right? While non-infectious diseases are simply non-communicable, non non-communicable, or you can say non-transmittable, right? For example, if you have, say, diabetes, right? So if you have diabetes and somebody comes and eats with you know, then diabetes cannot be transmitted from you to that person. Suppose you have cancer, and if somebody touches your body, then there is no chance of that cancer being spread from you to that person. So that's why we are classifying those diseases as non-infectious or non-communicable disease, right? Now these infectious diseases, generally when I was talking about, initially I gave the example कि आप किसी को दिखाते हैं हाथ में infection हो गया है, then that infection is most of the time because of certain microorganisms, right? किसी बैक्टीरिया का वहां पे इन्फेक्शन हो सकता है, या किसी फंगस का इन्फेक्शन हो सकता है, या किसी ऑर्गेनिज्म ने आपको वहां पे काट लिया, उसके वजह से वहां पे बैक्टीरियल प्रोलिफरेशन हो गया है, इस तरीके की चीज हो जाती है, राइट? सो these are generally caused by microorganisms, right? Microorganisms से होता है, microorganisms, those organisms which are not clearly observed through our naked eye, right? So this can include virus or a bacteria or maybe a fungus, right? Or maybe some protozoa. You can say these protozoa are the smallest animals, right? So they are very small and they can cause many diseases. While these diseases, the non-communicable diseases, the you cannot say the causative factor, but these diseases develop in our body because of the kind of environment we live in, the kind of lifestyle that we have, and many other maybe genetic factors as well, right? So these are determined by lifestyle or maybe environment, right? Or genetics. So suppose if I talk about breast cancer, right? So breast cancer is very prevalent in many of the developed countries, right? Like USA. It is also quite common in India now as well. But it has been seen that you know if a mother develops breast cancer, then the probability of her daughter to develop that particular disease is very high. So that is attributed to the genetics, right? It is in the genes that some family will suffer from this particular type of diseases, and they are they get transmitted from generation to generation, not like these diseases. And these infectious disease, they spread by direct contact, right? So spread by direct contact, right? So these diseases spread by direct contact, or they can spread via vector. What is vector? There are two vectors. One vector is there in physics, which tells you about the direction of something moving, right? This vector is not that physics wala vector. This vector is any organism, right, which transmits the disease from one person to another. For example, I can give you an example of mosquito, right? So it is involved in the transmission of malaria. It took several years for the scientists to actually come to know about the actual cycle of this malaria, how it is happening and how it is being transmitted from one person to another. So one very good example is that of malaria, where a mosquito is sucking blood from an infected person and then biting the another person, transmitting the pathogen that is a protozoa named plasmodium, right? So this is what a vector is. And this mosquito, it looks so small, but it is one of the most lethal organisms in the whole world. In fact, it is responsible for the death of, it contributes the maximum number of death of human being caused by any animal Forget lion, forget great white shark, forget all those things. This bloody mosquito, it kills millions of people every year, right? So it can cause malaria, it can cause dengue, it can cause lots of other diseases, right? So this is about the infectious disease, and there is no any such role of vector here, right? So they do not spread via, simply we can write it do not, these diseases do not spread. Khatam. Right. If I give you the example of this infectious disease, I can write about common cold, right? And the very severe form of this common cold or the cold is of course COVID, though it is not there in your NCRT, because NCRT के टाइम पे कोविड था नहीं, हम लोग पढ़ते थे. इनफैक्ट इन आर प्रोफेशनल एग्जाम इन माइक्रोबायोलॉजी, दिस कोविड वायरस वाज वन ऑफ द लीस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट वायरस. तो हमारे सीनियर्स जब उसमें इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस या इम्पोर्टेंट टॉपिक्स मार्क करते थे, क्योंकि इतने सारे टॉपिक होते थे एग्जाम टाइम में, आप सारे टॉपिक नहीं पढ़ पाते हो, तो then we used to go to our seniors and we used to request them to mark the important topics. And सीनियर्स के पास कुछ एक्स्ट्रा ब्रेन होता है, ज्ञान होता है, तो वो मार्क करते थे. एंड इन दैट कोविड यूज्ड टू बी लाइक सब कुछ पढ़ लिया तो कोविड पढ़ लेना. नाउ कोविड इज द मोस्ट important. People are expecting so many questions from COVID. Every in all the exams from first year till the final year, or maybe in post graduation, they are asking questions from COVID, right? So these kind of disease, I can write malaria, right? Here, what kind of diseases I can talk about? Cancers, right? Then I can talk about diabetes. So these are the diseases which are non-infectious diseases, and these are the diseases which are infectious diseases. So this is about the difference between the infectious and non-infectious diseases, which I was supposed to take in the previous class, but अभी खत्म कर, ठीक है? तो यहाँ तक बातें समझ में आ गई?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Are you guys done writing?
No, sir.
Just a second.
Okay, okay. Just give me a moment. Just give me a moment, okay? Yeah.
So please slide up.
More?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sit down.
Okay. So now we are done, talking about the differences between infectious and non-infectious diseases. Let us start with the infectious diseases, right? Because see, when we talk about diseases, these infectious diseases are said to be common uh, in developing countries or underdeveloped countries. Why so? Because जहाँ गंदगी होती है वहाँ ज्यादा कीड़े होते हैं, वहाँ ज्यादा माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स ग्रो करते हैं. जहाँ पे हेल्थ फैसिलिटीज अच्छी नहीं होती, तो ऐसे डिजीजेस जो है उन इलाकों में बहुत ज्यादा होते हैं. लाइक इफ यू गो टू सम अफ्रीकन कंट्री और इफ यू कम टू इंडिया, these diseases are very, very, very common. Every year, thousands and thousands of people die because of malaria, because of dengue, right? Because of typhoid, right? So these diseases are very common in these countries, and it is said that these non-infectious diseases, they are, because they are lifestyle diseases, they are common in developed countries, where people, they don't do much of exercise, they live on high calorie diet, they eat these processed foods, limited amount of exercise, living in a very congested area, these large buildings and all, which contribute to, development of these non-infectious or non-communicable form of disease. But India is a very unique country, where in cities, if you will go, you will find rich people, and you will see them, suffering from these kind of uh, non-infectious diseases, while if you will go to the village area or the slums area, you will find people there suffering from many other infectious disease, right? So it is very important, इसीलिए कहते हैं कि जो इंडियन डॉक्टर होता है उसको बहुत अच्छा माना जाता है, जो फॉरेन कंट्रीज में जाते हैं. The top notch doctors are from India, because these doctors are not only well read and, well educated about infectious disease, but also non-infectious disease, because they get to see patients from both domains of disease, right? So we are starting with the infectious disease, right? So whenever I say infectious disease, what should come into your head is SARS-CoV, coronavirus, right? It is a classical example of infectious disease, and वो याद रहेगा तो बहुत सारी चीजें समझ में, right? So let us talk about some of the agents which cause the disease. Though the name of the, disease is given, but the causative organism is not given in your NCERT. I'm writing some of the names of those organisms as well. If you wish, you can remember those names. If you don't, it is not necessary. Okay. So infectious diseases can be caused by many type of organism. Like it can be caused by bacteria. Wait. It can be caused by a bacteria, or it can be caused by a virus, right? Or it can be caused by a fungus, fine, or a protozoa, right? या फिर इसके साथ साथ और क्या हो सकता है? तो देयर आर सर्टेन वॉर्म्स, राइट, जो कि हमारे इंटेस्टाइन में हो जाते, कहते हैं ना पेट में कीड़ा हो गया इसके, तभी खाना नहीं खा रहा, इसको भूख नहीं लग रही, पतला हो रहा, देन इट इज अ वॉर्म. We'll talk about all of these, the name of the diseases which are given, and uh, other things as well. Fine. So start with some of the bacterial diseases, the name of which are mentioned in your NCERT are typhoid, right? One name is typhoid, another is TB, or which we call tuberculosis, or another is anthrax. So these are the three names which are mentioned in your NCERT, which are caused by these bacteria. So nothing much has been given, just the names are given. So do you want me to go in the depth of these diseases? Because it is not given, it is not necessary at your level, right? So just to add some extra point, I'm simply writing the name of the organisms which cause these diseases, and anything written in yellow is not there in your NCERT. And if you want to keep the name in your head, well and good, otherwise no problem, right? So it is caused
Okay.
by S, right, or simple I. So it is caused by S. typhi or Salmonella typhi, right? Tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, right? Anthrax is caused by something called Bacillus X, it is X, okay. Bacillus anthracis. So these are some of the names if you want to keep that in mind. Not really um, useful for you. Talking about the diseases caused by virus, it can be common cold, and this common cold is caused most commonly caused by rhinovirus. So I used to remember this name. Okay, this rhinovirus is in yellow. Okay, not important. I used to remember this like the common cold में नाक बहने लगती है. नाक rhino का नाक जो होता है. I used to just imagine, and also nose, rhino, anything like rhinoplasty, right? Rhinoria. These are the words which are used with nose. So rhinovirus, the name says. Or it can be influenza, right? Or I can name it dengue, or we can have AIDS, right? Or the COVID. This name is not there in your NCRT, but yeah, it is important. So now that they're asking these, um, MCQ kind of questions, so these names are important. They will give you which of the following diseases are not caused by virus, and they will write this one, this one, this one, and maybe tuberculosis. Then you have to find out that tuberculosis is something which is not caused by virus. Talking about fungus, fungus causes some skin lesions or skin infections, right? I'm not going into the detail of what kind of skin infections it causes, but there are lot many skin infections which are caused by fungus, like ringworm. Sorry, uh, these scaly lesions. ऐसे गोल गोल सा हो जाता है, and these are very scaly and dry, right? So these are caused by fungus. We are not going into the depth of it, right? So protozoa, like I said, they are very small, smallest of all animals. These protozoa, right? Like malaria. You must know malaria. What causes malaria? It is caused by plasmodium. Though it is not in your NCRT, malaria, it is important, right? Or elephantiasis. In this, the leg of the patient, it swells up, and it swells to become so large that it starts appearing like that of the foot of an elephant. So that's why it is called elephantiasis, right? Or kalazar. Kalazar. Kala azar hota hai. Kalazar. Okay. Right. So these are the diseases caused by protozoa, and there are certain worms like roundworm, right? The example, roundworm, and it is called Ascaris. Scaris, right? Scaris, it is called Scaris, and the disease caused by it is called scariasis, where there is, पेट में कीड़े हो जाते हैं जिसकी वजह से पेशेंट को भूख नहीं लगती, या भूख बहुत ज्यादा लगती है बट वो मोटा नहीं हो रहा होता, पतला होता जाता है, और स्टूल में ब्लड आना शुरू हो जाता है, या ऐसी कॉम्प्लिकेशंस, फीवर आना, ये सारी चीजें होने लगती है, राइट? Ascaris. So it is caused by Ascaris. Roundworm is called Ascaris, right? So these are the names. Let us go to your NCRT, right? And see some of the images about these organisms which is given, right? So I'm taking you to your NCRT. Why do we fall in? So these are the images, very beautiful images given in your NCRT. And you can see it is a SARS virus. See, this book, when I was in class 9, I had read this about, I read the very same book that you are reading now. So it has been 10 years, right? I was in class 9 in 2010, 11. Yeah. So during that time also, we had the very same book, and there the name of this virus, SARS virus, right? This virus is there in your NCRT since, I don't know, maybe 5 years before me as well. And today this virus, a variant of this virus came and completely, destroyed the whole ecosystem of human beings. So this is your SARS virus, right? SARS stands for severe acute respiratory syndrome. Like I said, acute is the word that has been used. Now you know what acute means, right? So it is a disease which is not going to last long. It is going to come like a, you can say, like a storm. It is going to destroy things and it is going to end. So this is what acute stands for, right? Respiratory, it means it has something to do with our respiratory system, our lungs. And syndrome means something in which there are lots of things happening at one time. Many systems are involved, many diseases are occurring at the same point of time, right? So this is the photo of your uh, SARS virus, and if you will see here, it is written 500 nanometers. 1 nanometer is 10 raised to power minus 9 meter, right? So this is, they have given this 500 nanometer just to understand, just to make you understand that how small these organisms are, right? You know what 1 centimeter is, 1 millimeter is, and then uh, you can, get some idea how small these things are, right? 500 nanometer, which is half of a micrometer, which is 1,000th of a millimeter, right? So this is scale given, and it is given by CDC in US, and CDC is the one which is involved in giving all those restrictions and all those protocols related to this COVID, right? It stands for, I guess, Center for Disease Control, United States, right? Now this is a picture of leishmania, right? Leishmania is the one which causes kala azar, right? Kala azar is the disease which I was talking about, and I don't know, it is looking so weird, right? So this is your leishmania. And next one is the staphylococci. Staphylococci is a bacteria, right, which causes acne. Acne, you must be understanding now that you are in the age of acne and all. So acne is like lesions or eruptions on your skin, which the girls don't like, boys as well. And during puberty, acne is very common, right? So this is a staphylococci bacteria, right? Next we have the is a trypanosoma, right? Protozoan responsible for sleeping sickness. It is also a protozoan. So if I haven't mentioned these names in your table, you can write this name as well, protozoan. This is called trypanosoma or trypanosoma. And you can see this is the organism, and this is our red blood cell, right? So red blood cell is about 8 micrometer, and see how small this is. And it can cause a lot of issues in our body, right? And this one is the picture of an adult roundworm which I was talking lately. This is the Ascaris lumbricoides, and it is the technical name. And this is the one which is present in our stomach, not really stomach, in the small intestine and large intestine part. It is given the small intestine, and this one causes lots of diarrhea and all those things, right? So these are the organisms which are given in your NCRT, and you should be aware of it. Now coming back to what we were learning. So this is the table. Write the things down, and then we'll be talking about things after. Are you guys done writing?
Just a second, sir. Just almost
Okay.
done.
So यहाँ तक बात समझ में आ रही? कुछ बाउंस तो नहीं हो रहा तुम्हारे? मतलब बाउंस मतलब समझ में नहीं आ रहा?
No, sir.
Yes, sir. It's clear.
No, she is saying no, sir. You are saying yes, sir. What should I infer from it?
Sir, it's clear.
Okay, good. So, honey,
Yes, it's clear.
good. वैसे इतना कुछ था नहीं, just names to remember. If you can remember the names, well and good. Otherwise, nothing technical stuff in it. So do you guys have your class after this, like 5 to 6?
No, sir.
Yes, sir. So physics.
So, but in the group it's written that it will be tomorrow. It will held tomorrow at 4.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir. It's it.
Raj is not following the schedule, bro.
No, sir. Actually, I've just seen that 4:15 that geography class will be starting.
Sit down.
Fine. Raj?
Yes, sir. Then.
Okay. So this is about the uh, different causative organisms, where these organisms are responsible for different diseases, and why we have classified, so that we can, treat these um, diseases caused by these organisms. So once we know what kind of an organism it is, we have specific treatment protocols and medicines for that, right? So if it is a bacterial infection, we start with antibiotics. If it is a viral infection, generally antibiotics do not work on a viral infection, and it is one of a very commonly asked questions in your exams, that why these antibiotics do not work in a patient with common cold. Common cold is generally caused by a common cold virus, that is the rhinovirus. So it is a viral disease, but bacterial antibiotics किसी को पेनिसिलिन खिला दो या एमोक्सिसिलिन खिला दो या ऐसी जो दवाइयाँ होती है वो काम क्यों नहीं करती है? तो उसका भी आंसर ढूंढने के. सो इफ इट इज अ फंगल इन्फेक्शन, वी हैव एंटी फंगल ड्रग्स. इफ इट इज अ प्रोटोजोल, एंटी प्रोटोजोल drugs, these worms, anti-helminthic drugs, and lots of other drugs are there. We have classified so that we can make it easy to diagnose and treat these diseases, right? So in your NCRT, they have written something about penicillin. Penicillin, right? Penicillin, it is the first antibiotic, right? It is the first antibiotic, and it revolutionized the treatment of this infectious disease. Before that, there were lots of theories, like these people, they have extra warm blood, so these kind of people will have fever, या कुछ cold blooded है तो ऐसी बीमारी होंगी. Lots of theories were given, but then this penicillin was discovered by Edward Jenner, I guess. I don't really remember the name. So after the discovery of this penicillin, we started actually treating the diseases caused by bacteria. So how does it work? Penicillin works by um, preventing the bacteria from synthesizing its cell wall, right? So when we were talking about the cell, I had told you about a structure which is present outside the plasma membrane, and that was called cell wall. And it was a very thick, very rigid, very resistant structure, right? So when a bacteria synthesizes its cell wall, it, you know, it kind of forms a shield, and our immune system becomes very, weak, or not really weak, incompetent to kill this bacteria. And once the bacteria starts proliferating, it starts creating lots of problems in our body. Maybe it may be fever, it may be rashes, it may be lots of other diseases, right? So many other things. You can tell a number of things that happens because of this bacteria. I think okay, before it ends, I'll finish it. So how does it work? Mechanism of action of this penicillin: it prevents the synthesis of bacterial cell wall. right? That's how it works. And does not it does not work on virus. Why? Because virus use different mechanism, and what that mechanism is, it uses intracellular uh, host machinery. And what does it mean? It means that while a bacteria, suppose this is a cell, right? A bacteria comes and then starts eating up the cell or fighting or destroying it. But in case of viruses, they go inside the cell and uses the cell's own system to divide, and then they move out from this cell and go to different part of the body, and uh, causes lots of havoc there. So this is how it works, and because viruses are working in a different kind, in a different manner as that of bacteria, hence we are unable to use these antibiotics over the virus. So once the class gets over, rejoin it. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, I think it is about to get over, so we'll be talking about it
Yes.
in a while.